Welcome to TrueCrime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us. If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us.
Today, we delve into the perplexing story of Frank Abagnale Jr., a name synonymous with audacious deception. Before he became the subject of a Spielberg film, Abagnale was a real-life enigma, a teenager who perpetrated a series of elaborate cons across multiple continents. His exploits, though seemingly glamorous on the surface, left a trail of financial devastation and emotional turmoil in their wake. We'll be examining not just the how of his crimes, but the why, exploring the psychological factors that may have driven such a young individual to such extraordinary lengths. This is a story of forged identities, impersonations, and a cat-and-mouse game with authorities that spanned years.
Abagnale's story begins with seemingly innocuous acts of check fraud, but these early transgressions quickly escalated into a complex web of deceit, involving impersonating an airline pilot, a doctor, and even a lawyer. What's striking is the sheer audacity of his schemes, the ease with which he seemingly slipped into these roles, and the trust he managed to garner from those around him. We'll be tracing his journey from his teenage years in New York to his international escapades, analyzing the meticulous planning and daring execution that allowed him to evade capture for so long. The scale and scope of his cons were truly unprecedented for someone of his age, raising questions about the vulnerabilities of the systems he exploited.
It's important to note that while Abagnale's story has been romanticized in popular culture, the reality of his crimes had significant consequences for the victims involved. Businesses lost substantial amounts of money, individuals were defrauded, and the integrity of professional institutions was compromised. We'll be hearing from some of those affected, exploring the impact Abagnale's actions had on their lives and livelihoods. This is a crucial element often overlooked in the more glamorous portrayals of his story. We aim to present a balanced perspective, acknowledging both the ingenuity of his schemes and the very real damage they caused.
Over the next few episodes, we'll be dissecting Abagnale's methods, analyzing the social and historical context in which these crimes took place, and exploring the investigations that eventually led to his capture. We'll also examine his subsequent cooperation with the FBI, his career in fraud prevention, and the ethical dilemmas raised by his unique trajectory. This isn't just a story about a con artist, it's a story about identity, trust, and the human capacity for both incredible deception and remarkable redemption. It's a story that continues to fascinate and provoke debate decades later. Less than, person one greater than. Less than, person one greater than. Before Frank Abagnale Jr. became infamous for his elaborate cons, the unsuspecting world he operated in was a place of relative tranquility. Let's take, for instance, the small town of Montrichard, France, one of the many places where Abagnale's fraudulent checks were cashed. Imagine, if you will, the cobblestone streets, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from the local boulangerie, the gentle murmur of conversations spilling out from quaint cafes. Life moved at a slower pace, governed by the rhythm of the church bells and the changing seasons. Shopkeepers knew their customers by name, trust was implicit in daily transactions, and the notion of someone impersonating a Pan Am pilot, as Abagnale would later do, was simply unfathomable. This backdrop of unsuspecting normalcy makes Abagnale's crimes all the more audacious, a stark contrast to the quiet lives he disrupted.
Precisely. It's crucial to understand this context to grasp the full impact of Abagnale's deception. Think of the local bank teller in Montrichard, perhaps a woman who'd spent her entire life in that small community, where a handshake still sealed a deal. She likely handled transactions with a sense of routine, recognizing familiar faces and exchanging pleasantries. She probably never encountered anything remotely resembling a forged check, let alone one presented by a seemingly confident young man claiming to be an airline pilot. Abagnale exploited this inherent trust, preying on communities where suspicion was a rarity. His actions weren't just financial crimes. They were violations of a social contract, a shattering of the peace that characterized these places.
The ripple effect of his actions extended far beyond the immediate financial losses. Imagine the growing unease, the seeds of doubt sown in once trusting relationships. The bank teller, once confident in her judgment, now questions every transaction, every customer. Shopkeepers, previously open and welcoming, now eye strangers with suspicion. The very fabric of these communities, woven together by years of shared trust, begins to fray. This erosion of social cohesion, the subtle shift from innocence to skepticism, is perhaps the most insidious consequence of Abagnale's crimes.
And remember, this was a time before widespread electronic banking, before instant verification and sophisticated fraud detection systems. A physical check held a certain weight, representing a promise of payment backed by the integrity of the issuer. Abagnale understood this implicitly, and he manipulated this system with astonishing ease. Each successfully cashed fraudulent check was a small victory for him, a testament to his audacity, but also a blow against the established order, a chip away at the foundation of trust upon which these communities were built. He left a trail of suspicion and uncertainty in his wake, a testament to the far-reaching impact of his deceptions.
Frank Abagnale Jr. Crass' early life seemed ordinary, almost idyllic. Growing up in New Rochelle, New York, he enjoyed a comfortable middle-class upbringing. His parents, Frank Abagnale Sr. and Paulette Abagnale, were seemingly happily married, providing a stable home environment. Young Frank excelled academically, displaying a particular aptitude for languages. He was charismatic and popular, blending seamlessly into the social fabric of his community. There's a certain irony in this picture of normalcy, considering the extraordinary life of deception he would soon lead. It's like looking at a perfectly still pond, unaware of the currents swirling beneath the surface. This period, however, holds crucial clues to understanding his later transformations. His close relationship with his father, a respected businessman, would later influence Frank Jr.'s choice of impersonations, while his linguistic skills would become invaluable tools in his elaborate cons.
Indeed, those formative years are often where the seeds of both great achievement and great deviance are sown. While outwardly appearing as a typical teenager, certain incidents began to reveal cracks in the facade. One significant event was his father's involvement in legal troubles related to tax evasion. This exposed young Frank to the world of financial manipulation and the potential consequences of such actions. Simultaneously, his parents' marriage began to deteriorate, culminating in a difficult divorce. This undoubtedly had a profound impact on Frank Jr., leaving him feeling emotionally adrift and potentially contributing to a sense of instability. He started engaging in petty scams, initially small-scale deceptions like using his father's gas credit card for personal gain and cashing fraudulent checks. These early transgressions, though seemingly insignificant, were the first steps down a path that would lead him far from the tranquil life he once knew.
The seemingly idyllic world of Frank Abagnale Jr. began to unravel further with the onset of his parents' divorce. At 16, he found himself caught in the middle of a custody battle, forced to choose between his mother and father. This emotional upheaval likely exacerbated his feelings of insecurity and disorientation. It's around this time that the petty scams escalated dramatically. He ran away from home, not to escape the law, not yet, but to escape the emotional turmoil of a broken family. This escape marked a turning point. The world outside the confines of New Rochelle was vast, and, to a young man with a knack for deception, full of opportunity. He started forging checks, initially as a means of survival. But soon the thrill of the con, the challenge of outsmarting others, became an addiction. The ordinary boy, the product of a seemingly stable upbringing, was gone, replaced by a chameleon-like figure, ready to adopt any persona necessary to survive and thrive in his newfound world of deceit.
The escalating deceptions, the forged checks, these were not simply acts of survival. They were a manifestation of a deeper psychological shift. Frank Abagnale Jr. wasn't merely seeking financial stability. He was seeking an identity. He was crafting a new self, one far removed from the fractured reality of his family life. This is where the true danger lies. It's not merely the monetary value of his cons, but the systematic erosion of his own identity. Each new persona, each successful deception, further distanced him from the core of who he was, replacing it with a carefully constructed illusion. This constant shifting, this chameleon-like existence, created a dangerous feedback loop. The more he pretended, the less he knew himself. And the less he knew himself, the more he needed the validation of his elaborate charades.
In this segment, we delve into Frank Abagnale Jr.'s initial foray into the world of deception, a seemingly innocuous start that quickly spiraled into a complex web of fraudulent activities. His first documented con involved his father's gas credit card. Abagnale, a teenager at the time, began using the card to purchase car parts and other items, far exceeding authorized spending. To cover his tracks, he devised a scheme where he would convince gas station attendants to give him cash back in exchange for a portion of the purchase amount charged to his father's card. This seemingly simple act of teenage rebellion marked the beginning of his life as a con artist, exploiting trust and manipulating systems for personal gain. This initial incident reveals a cunning and calculated mind at work, a troubling foreshadowing of the elaborate schemes to come.
The gas card scheme wasn't merely a youthful indiscretion, it served as a crucial learning experience for Abagnale. It provided him with his first taste of manipulating systems and exploiting vulnerabilities. He quickly realized the potential for financial gain through deception, a realization that would shape his criminal trajectory. Furthermore, this initial con showcased his ability to think on his feet and adapt his methods as needed. When gas station attendants became suspicious, he refined his tactics, becoming more persuasive and developing a convincing facade. This adaptability and resilience would become hallmarks of his criminal career, enabling him to evade authorities and maintain his charade for an extended period. The gas card incident, seemingly small in scale, became a formative experience, laying the foundation for his future exploits.
The consequences of the gas card fraud were significant. Despite the relatively small sums involved, Abagnale's father faced substantial debt, and the family's financial stability was jeopardized. This incident marked a turning point in Abagnale's life, contributing to the breakdown of his parents, marriage, and significantly impacting his family dynamics. While the financial repercussions were undoubtedly severe, the emotional toll on the family was perhaps even more profound. The betrayal of trust and the realization of their son's deceitful actions created deep rifts within the family unit. This initial act of fraud foreshadowed the escalating nature of his future crimes and the devastating impact they would have on both his victims and his own family.
Abagnale's response to his father's mounting debt and the subsequent family turmoil was telling. Rather than confronting his actions and taking responsibility, he chose to run away from home. This escape marked a pivotal moment in his criminal development. It severed his ties with his family and propelled him into a life of anonymity and deception. On the streets, with limited resources and a growing need to survive, he was forced to rely on his wits and develop increasingly sophisticated methods of conning people. This period of isolation and desperation further solidified his commitment to a life of crime, setting the stage for his audacious impersonations and elaborate cons that would capture national attention. This flight from responsibility signaled his descent into a world of increasingly complex and high-stakes criminal activity.
The impact of Abagnale's impersonations rippled through various sectors. Pan American World Airways, where he posed as a pilot, faced scrutiny regarding their security protocols. How could a young man, barely out of his teens, convincingly portray a seasoned pilot, logging thousands of miles and even supervising flights? The breach of trust was profound. Hospitals where he impersonated a chief resident physician were left reeling, questioning the integrity of their own systems. The sheer audacity of his actions created a chilling effect, sowing seeds of doubt and paranoia. The question on everyone's mind was, if someone could so easily slip into these roles of authority, who else could be hiding in plain sight? The very foundation of professional trust began to crumble.
Beyond the institutions directly affected, the public's perception of authority underwent a significant shift. The seemingly impenetrable walls of professional expertise had been breached. People started to question the validity of credentials, scrutinizing uniforms and titles with a newfound skepticism. The very idea that a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, professions demanding years of training and rigorous certification, could be convincingly impersonated by a teenager eroded the public's faith in these systems. The unspoken agreement, the implicit trust between professionals and the public, had been shattered. An undercurrent of fear began to circulate, a subtle but pervasive anxiety about the potential for deception lurking beneath the surface of everyday life.
The law enforcement agencies involved faced immense pressure to apprehend Abagnale. The FBI, in particular, found themselves in the unenviable position of chasing a ghost. Abagnale's constant movement, coupled with his chameleon-like ability to adopt new identities, made him an incredibly elusive target. He was a master of manipulation, exploiting the limitations of communication and identification technologies of the time. Every time authorities thought they were closing in, he would vanish, seamlessly adopting a new persona and melting back into the crowd. This cat-and-mouse game became increasingly frustrating for law enforcement, turning the pursuit into a high-stakes game of chess played across continents. The longer he evaded capture, the more his legend grew, further fueling the public's fascination with his audacious exploits.
The scale of Abagnale's deception was unprecedented. He operated in an era before sophisticated databases and instant communication. Information sharing between agencies was slow and cumbersome, allowing him to exploit these gaps to his advantage. His ability to forge checks, combined with his persuasive charm and confidence, enabled him to defraud banks across multiple countries. The financial losses were substantial, but perhaps more significant was the damage to the public's trust in financial institutions. Each forged check, each successful con, further deepened the sense of unease and vulnerability that permeated society. The seemingly infallible systems designed to protect financial transactions had been exposed as alarmingly susceptible to manipulation.
In this segment, we delve into the psychology of Frank Abagnale Jr., seeking to understand the contradictions between his outward charm and his criminal actions. He presented himself as a confident, accomplished individual, embodying the roles he assumed, whether as a pilot, doctor, or lawyer. This outward confidence masked a deep-seated insecurity, stemming perhaps from his parents, divorce, and the subsequent disruption of his adolescence. He craved acceptance and recognition, seemingly filling the void left by his fractured family life with the admiration he received while impersonating these authority figures. His transformations weren't just about financial gain. They were about crafting an identity that commanded respect and attention, a stark contrast to the teenage runaway he truly was. This duality is key to understanding his complex motivations.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating paradox. On the surface, Abagnale was audacious and brazen, forging checks and assuming false identities with apparent ease. Yet beneath this veneer of boldness lay a vulnerability, a desire to belong and to prove his worth. His cons weren't simply acts of deception. They were performances, meticulously crafted to maintain the illusion of competence and authority. He studied the nuances of each profession he impersonated, immersing himself in the jargon and mannerisms to ensure his portrayal was convincing. This dedication to his deceptions suggests a deep-seated need for validation, a yearning to be perceived as someone significant, someone worthy of admiration, even if that admiration was built on a foundation of lies.
The contradictions in Abagnale's character are further evident in his relationships. He cultivated a sense of trust and camaraderie with those around him, even as he was deceiving them. This ability to connect with people, to gain their confidence, was instrumental to his success. He understood the power of charm and used it masterfully to manipulate those he encountered. However, this charm wasn't entirely superficial here. There are accounts suggesting genuine affection for some of the people he interacted with, blurring the lines between calculated manipulation and genuine connection. This adds another layer of complexity to his psychological profile, raising the question of whether he was capable of empathy, even while engaged in deceitful acts.
His ability to compartmentalize is striking. He managed to maintain multiple fabricated identities simultaneously, juggling the demands of each role without seemingly losing his composure. This suggests a remarkable degree of organization and mental agility, qualities often associated with successful individuals in legitimate fields. Yet he directed these talents towards criminal pursuits, driven by a need that remained elusive even to himself. It's this internal conflict, the tension between his capabilities and his choices, that makes his story so compelling. He possessed the potential for a successful life within the confines of the law, yet he chose a path of deception, leaving us to ponder the underlying psychological factors that drove him.
In this part, we reconstruct the pursuit of Frank Abagnale Jr., focusing on the investigative challenges, the missed opportunities, and the psychological game between the pursued and the pursuer. Abagnale's mastery of disguise and manipulation allowed him to stay one step ahead of law enforcement for an extended period. One striking example is his brief stint as a Pan American World Airways pilot. He exploited a loophole in the system, obtaining a genuine Pan Am uniform and forging an FAA pilot's license. He then deadheaded on Pan Am flights, essentially hitching free rides worldwide, all while under the noses of unsuspecting airline staff and authorities. This audacity speaks to his confidence and the surprising vulnerabilities in the systems he exploited. It also highlights the early limitations in information sharing and security protocols, allowing him to operate undetected across multiple jurisdictions.
Absolutely. The investigators faced numerous hurdles. Abagnale's constant movement and rapid changes in identity made tracking him incredibly difficult. He was a ghost, appearing and disappearing, leaving a trail of forged checks and assumed identities in his wake. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states and even countries were involved, but communication and coordination were slow and cumbersome in that era. This lack of centralized information sharing created crucial delays and allowed Abagnale to exploit jurisdictional gaps. Furthermore, his youth and apparent harmlessness often led people to underestimate him. Many dismissed him as a prankster rather than a serious criminal, further hindering the investigation. This initial perception gave him valuable time and freedom to continue his schemes.
There were instances of near captures and missed leads that further complicated the investigation. One account describes a situation where Abagnale was nearly apprehended at a hotel in New Orleans. A hotel maid, recognizing him from a wanted poster, alerted the authorities. However, Abagnale, with his characteristic charm and quick thinking, convinced the responding officers that the maid was mistaken and managed to slip away just minutes before the FBI arrived. These near misses became increasingly frustrating for law enforcement, bolstering Abagnale's confidence and adding a layer of psychological warfare to the pursuit. He seemed to be taunting them, reveling in his ability to outsmart them. This cat-and-mouse game became a significant aspect of the case.
Beyond the near captures, there were also instances of false hope for investigators. Occasionally, individuals fitting Abagnale's description would be apprehended, leading to a brief sense of closure, only for it to be revealed that they were mistaken identities. This created a roller coaster of emotions for the investigators, swinging between optimism and disappointment. These false leads not only consumed valuable resources, but also allowed Abagnale to gain even more ground. The constant chase and the psychological strain it placed on law enforcement became a defining feature of the investigation. The authorities were dealing with an elusive and highly adaptable adversary. His ability to blend in, manipulate, and exploit trust made him a formidable opponent, constantly challenging their assumptions and investigative methods.
In this segment, we delve into the often overlooked aspect of Abagnale's crimes, the emotional toll on his victims. While the narrative often focuses on his audacity and skill, it's crucial to remember that each forged check, each impersonated role, represented a real-world impact on individuals and institutions. Beyond the immediate financial losses, there were deeper, more insidious consequences. The violation of trust, the feeling of being deceived, can leave lasting psychological scars. Imagine a small business owner realizing they'd accepted a fraudulent check, potentially facing financial ruin through no fault of their own. This wasn't a victimless crime spree. It was a series of betrayals that rippled through communities. We'll explore the long-term unease and trauma experienced by those affected by Abagnale's deceptions, moving beyond the dollar amounts to understand the true human cost.
Precisely. It's easy to get caught up in the almost romanticized version of this story, but we must ground it in the reality of the harm inflicted. Consider the emotional impact on the families of those whose identities Abagnale stole. The sense of violation, of having one's identity appropriated and used for criminal gain, can be deeply unsettling. Imagine learning that your name and credentials have been used to perpetuate fraud, potentially damaging your reputation and creating future difficulties. This wasn't simply about money. It was about identity theft, a crime that strikes at the core of who we are. The anxiety and distrust that can follow such an experience can be profound and long-lasting, affecting relationships and even individuals' sense of self. The families impacted likely lived with a lingering sense of vulnerability, constantly questioning the security of their personal information.
And the impact extended beyond individual victims to the broader community. Abagnale's actions eroded trust in institutions, from banks and airlines to hospitals and legal systems. His ability to manipulate these systems highlighted vulnerabilities, creating a sense of unease and insecurity. People began to question the validity of checks, the legitimacy of credentials, and the reliability of institutions they had previously relied upon. This erosion of trust can have far-reaching consequences, affecting not only financial transactions, but also social interactions and community cohesion. The ripple effect of Abagnale's crimes contributed to a climate of suspicion and skepticism that lingered long after he was apprehended.
Absolutely. This atmosphere of uncertainty and distrust is a significant, yet often overlooked aspect of this case. Think about the airline industry, for instance. Abagnale's impersonation of a pilot not only defrauded the airline, but also potentially jeopardized the safety of passengers. This introduced a layer of fear and anxiety into air travel, making people question the credibility of those in positions of authority. The long-term impact on the industry, in terms of increased security measures and heightened scrutiny, is a direct consequence of Abagnale's actions. This underscores the broader societal impact of his crimes, extending far beyond the immediate financial losses and impacting public confidence in critical institutions.
The net was closing in. Abagnale's audacious impersonations, while lucrative and seemingly effortless, were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. His fabricated identities, from airline pilot to doctor to lawyer, required a constant stream of forged documents and a meticulous attention to detail that was beginning to fray under the pressure of his relentless pursuit. The FBI, initially baffled by his chameleon-like ability to slip through their fingers, were gradually piecing together the puzzle of his movements. Informants, tipped off by his extravagant spending habits and increasingly brazen cons, were starting to surface. The international scope of his activities, once a shield, now became a vulnerability. Each border crossing, each forged check, each assumed identity, added another breadcrumb trail for investigators to follow. The world, once his playground, was shrinking.
The crucial breakthrough came unexpectedly in Montpellier, France. A shop clerk, recognizing Abagnale from a wanted poster, alerted local authorities. This seemingly insignificant act, a simple observation by a vigilant citizen, brought an end to years of elaborate deception. While Abagnale had successfully evaded capture by constantly changing locations and identities, the familiarity of his face, etched onto countless posters distributed globally, proved to be his undoing. His reliance on physical disguises and forged documents could not mask the one constant, his own visage. The arrest was swift and anticlimactic. The man who had impersonated figures of authority, who had flown planes, treated patients, and argued cases, was apprehended while walking down a busy street, a stark contrast to the glamorous life he had meticulously constructed.
Abagnale's arrest marked not only the end of his criminal exploits, but also the beginning of a complex legal process. Extradited to the United States, he faced multiple charges of forgery, fraud, and impersonation in various jurisdictions. The sheer volume of his crimes and the intricate web of deceit he had woven presented a formidable challenge for prosecutors. The scale of his deception was unprecedented. He hadn't just broken the law, he had seemingly bent reality to his will, creating elaborate fictional narratives around himself. The task facing investigators now was to untangle this web, to separate fact from fiction, and to establish a definitive account of his activities for prosecution. This involved interviewing countless witnesses, verifying forged documents, and tracing the flow of money through his various schemes. It was a monumental undertaking.
His initial sentencing reflected the gravity of his offenses, with multiple concurrent sentences adding up to considerable jail time. However, the story doesn't end there. Recognizing his unique skills and understanding of fraudulent practices, the FBI saw an opportunity to utilize Abagnale's expertise. He was offered a deal to assist the FBI in combating fraud and forgery in exchange for a reduced sentence and eventual release. This unusual arrangement marked a turning point not only in Abagnale's life, but also in the FBI's approach to white-collar crime. They were, in effect, enlisting the help of a master con artist to catch other con artists. This decision, though controversial, proved to be highly effective, leveraging Abagnale's intimate knowledge of fraudulent techniques to prevent countless other crimes. His unique perspective offered insights that traditional law enforcement methods often missed.
So we've meticulously dissected Frank Abagnale Jr.'s cons, from forging checks to impersonating a Pan Am pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. We've explored the audacity of his schemes, the sheer volume of his fraudulent activities spanning multiple countries, and the cat-and-mouse game he played with the FBI. We've heard from some of the individuals he interacted with, those who were taken in by his charm and apparent authority. It's a complex tapestry woven from deceit, cunning, and a surprising level of adaptability. Yet one question lingers. How did he manage to operate undetected for so long, moving within seemingly secure environments, manipulating systems, and assuming identities with such apparent ease? It's a testament to his skills, but also a troubling reflection on the vulnerabilities within those systems he exploited.
Absolutely, and we haven't even delved deeply into the psychological aspects of Abagnale's character. Was it a thrill-seeking impulse driving him, a desire to prove something to himself or perhaps to his estranged parents? Or was there a deeper pathology at play, a detachment from the consequences of his actions? Experts have weighed in over the years, offering various interpretations of his behavior, attributing it to everything from a fractured family background to a preternatural talent for manipulation. Regardless of the root cause, his story forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that highly intelligent, charismatic individuals can exist outside the boundaries of conventional morality, their true natures masked beneath a veneer of normalcy. This is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the whole affair.
The fact that Abagnale eventually cooperated with the FBI, assisting them in understanding and combating fraud, adds another layer of complexity to his narrative. He went from being a notorious con man to a valuable asset in the fight against financial crime. It's a remarkable transformation, one that raises questions about redemption, the possibility of change, and the blurred lines between criminal ingenuity and societal contribution. His life, in essence, becomes a cautionary tale about the deceptive nature of appearances, a reminder that things are not always what they seem.
Precisely. Frank Abagnale Jr.'s story is a chilling illustration of the potential for evil to lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. He wasn't some shadowy figure operating in the dark corners of society. He moved among us, in broad daylight, exploiting the trust and the systems we rely upon. He reminds us that the most dangerous threats are often the ones we least expect, the ones hidden in plain sight. And that perhaps is the most disturbing thought of all. How many others are out there, just as skilled, just as charming, just as capable of deception, waiting for their moment to strike?
Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.
This case remains unsolved. Perhaps the truth is still out there,